This is Dominic. Dominic works at a 5-star restaurant called the Pixel Palace. There, some of video games' most popular celebrities pop in to have a drink. Sometimes they share stories and even secrets. Because as we all know, what the bartender hears is confidential, isn't it?
So I'm sitting there tending bar when in walks someone I haven't seen in a while, Sheik. Now Sheik's a really nice bloke, keeps to himself, doesn't talk much. And one day he sits down and he orders a vodka on the rocks. And he looks at me and he says, "You know what I love about vodka?" I'll say, "Do tell." And he says, "You can see right through it." And I said, "Well, what exactly do you mean by that, sir?" And he says, "Well, appearances can be very deceiving, can't they?" And then Sheik proceeds to take off his mask and show that Sheik in fact wasn't a he at all, he was a she. Not just a she, a royal she, it was Princess Zelda. Well, that took me totally by surprise. I said, "Your Highness, what do you do? Why are you dressing up like this?" And she said, "Well, at first it started off kind of a means of survival. There's this really long story about this guy who looked like a pig. I couldn't quite follow it, but it did sound very epic anyway." And she said, "Well, people, when they think you're a guy, they treat you different. You know, they don't act like you're royalty or anything." I said, "You are royalty." And she says, "I know, that's part of the point. It's that everyone treats you like you're an individual. I mean, it's one thing to be female or to be royalty, but when you're both, people look at you a little differently." So she said she really got used to wearing the men's clothing and talking in the deep voice. And of course I asked her, I said, "Well, what about Link? Does he know about this?" She says, No, he'd kill me if we found out about this." And I said, well, don't you think you should tell him then? I mean, this is kind of a big ordeal." And she says, "No, he has kind of his own issues to work out." I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Well, not everybody in my kingdom wears a skirt, if you know what I mean." And I said, he doesn't really wear the pants in the relationship." She says, "He has never worn pants. I've worn pants more than he has." She said she finally wanted to defend herself because, you know, being kidnapped so many times can really go to your head. "Have you heard about Peach?" she asked. And I said, "Oh yeah, I know about Peach." So we chatted a little longer, you know, just what it's like to be a woman and to be a man, I guess. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Link enters the room. So we both freeze, and well, we don't move a muscle. And he sits down right next to her, and looks at me, he says, "Give me a grasshopper." He has a thing for green, I don't know what it is. Fetish maybe, I don't know. So I go and I make him his drink, and he starts getting pretty close to Sheik. Like uncomfortably close. He puts his hand on Sheik's back and he says, "Hey here buddy, you come here often?" And Sheik, donning her lower voice, says, "No." And he says, "Well, I think a tall, handsome drink of water like you should come by here more often." So I decide to butt in a little bit, and I'll say, "You know, Mr. L, that might not be the best idea." And he says, "Cool it, bartender, I got this." So he starts rubbing his hand. And he says, "So you live around here?" Of course, I can't imagine what's going on in Zelda's head right now, but you know, she stays in character as Sheik and says, "Don't you have a girlfriend, a certain royal girlfriend?" And Link says, "Oh, Zelda, yeah, but, me and her, we got an understanding." And Sheik, in a very angry tone, says, "What kind of understanding?" And he says, "Well, you know, she kind of lets my sword swing both ways, if you know what I mean." And Sheik, of course, says, "Really? Well, does this happen often?" And Link says, "All the time." She's totally cool about it, totally cool. But this is about as uncomfortable as you can possibly get. I mean, the tension, you could cut it with a master sword. I mean, it was totally insane. And Sheik, again staying in character, says, "So you've been with all the men?" He says, "Oh, yeah, plenty of men." And Sheik asks, "Well, who exactly?" And he says, "Oh, all the greats. Kid Icarus, Luigi, the entire cast of Fire Emblem." There's also a brief thing with Cupid at one point, but he didn't seem to want to go into that much. So Sheik, looking like she's ready to rip his head off, says, "So you've been with all these men?" And he says, "Yeah, sometimes we do it 3 at a time. The Triforce of Love, we called it. Oh, you couldn't get a better three-way in San Francisco. And they say all fairies have wings, he said. So he grabs Sheik's hand and he says, so what do you say, guy? You wanna get in and play my magic flute? It's just then that Sheik took off her disguise to show who she really was. I think Link wet himself. It was pretty embarrassing, you could see it going down his tights. And they just stood there, looking at each other. For 3 minutes. I timed it! 3 minutes. Not a word, eye to eye, looking at each other. And so Link finally broke the silence and said, "You must think I'm Link! No, I'm the evil Link from the Dark World! Yes, yes, and since everything is opposite in the Dark World," she kneed him in the crotch after that. She had enough. Zelda then put her costume back on and stormed out of the bar. I said, "Mrs. Z, what about your drink?" And she said, "He'll pay for it." Stormed out the door. Well, Link slowly climbed up back to the bar, looked at me and gave a little shrug and said, "Women, can't live with them, can't sleep with them." I didn't laugh at that. So he sat there crossing his legs, when all of a sudden, right next to him, Samus sat down in her battle gear. Link starts to move in really close. He says, "Well, hey, you handsome tall drink of water. You come here often?" Samus then took off her helmet. Link turned the other way and said, "Never mind. Some people never learn. Maybe some people don't want to learn. I don't know. You see a lot of strange things as a bartender. You see a lot of strange things at the Pixel Palace. So, I see a lot of strange things as a bartender at the Pixel Palace. And that ain't no lie. Swear to